Hey YouTubers, and thank you for tuning in to today's random video on YouTube. Let's just hope there's no copyright music on this video, because obviously, hey, if I think about copyright music, obviously there's a lot of legal issues and whatnot. But anyways, we've got a lot of great news so far. We've got our pumpkin plant that has, strangely enough, gone a bit wet. I do try and wipe this thing down just to avoid it getting a bit rotten. Obviously, I suppose so. If there's any like contaminated bits of dirt and other whatnot, that can really affect the ripening of this pumpkin, which is not very good. But anyways, hey, I actually fed it with lots and lots of water. Now, the one big problem with pumpkin plants is that if you water around across through the leaves, well, that might probably rot the plant. I think that is one thing in common. But anyways, of course, yes, if I do water around across through the vines and the roots, that should be a little bit much more nicer. I think a lot much more better, I think. But anyways, hey, let's take a look at the backyard garden for ourselves and see what amazing plants that we've been planting so far. Of course, we've got a lot of cabbage plants, cabbage seedlings, whatever the hell they're called. I also made sure that I've actually been planting my lettuce a lot more direct into the shade. And that's because, you know, when you plant these things on direct shade and there's actually a cat that's actually traversing and crawling across through such dried up, parched grass. But anyways, hey, let's take a look at the surrounding parts of the backyard garden, which is going to be pretty amazing. It's getting quite breezy, of course. I'll tell you what, my backyard garden has really been resilient and straightforward, stayed fresh. Probably because I've been using quite the right amount of water for these plants. But anyways, hey, let's go ahead and a bit of a good trek across. We've got some tomato seedlings, which I don't think they're going to make it towards September and October, unlike these two right here. And also the other one, which has started to bear some fruit, which is amazing. Now, if we keep the warm water for a longer period of time, if not dry, I suppose, say, well, they are very vulnerable of wilting, unless if I quench them up with a lot of water, I suppose, say, but not too much water, I suppose, say, just plentiful amounts of water. They should be very fine. But anyways, hey, let me just go ahead and have a bit of a complete traverse around across through the backyard garden. We've got a lot of pumpkin flowers. A lot of these are male, and obviously if you see a male flower, they don't even have a fruit. That's very much what they are about, I suppose. And there you go, there's the pumpkin fruit itself. I did layer in. I could try and, try and change a different piece of, wood, because obviously, hey, who knows? That might actually help. I might have to probably adjust this a little bit so that it doesn't overwhelm a little bit, I suppose, hey? And the pigeon's cooing in the background. I want to try and do help the pumpkin for a bit, I suppose, eh? It's very, very nice when you start to see the pumpkin vines looking oh so good. I might have to probably top this one up with fertilizer. I always do that like, should I do that like once or twice a week? Because, if you bring too much fertilizer, that might not help the pumpkin to be that spectacular. Who knows, I might end up getting a much smaller pumpkin than one would actually expect. But anyways, hey, we've got a lot of great stuff. We've got some cabbages ready to be planted for autumn time. Obviously, if the drought is finally broken out, of course. We will be hopeful as Hades, I suppose. Well, not Hades, actually. Is it going to be Hope in Hades? No, we've got some fresh tomato seedlings that I've just watered today. And mind you, hey, these plants have been growing oh so tall because of the strong, hot sunshine. And I'll tell you what, that's been quite good. Hopefully, I could aerate the soil a little bit more so that the soil has a lot much more moisture retented, if that's a very good word to describe it. Moisture retention must be very necessary to really withstand, I suppose, to be necessary to try and help my plants, I suppose. But anyways, we've got a lot of calendulas. Quite interestingly, as you can start to see, the calendulas are very much preparing their late seasonal blossomings. And then there's actually a couple of unhealthy looking calendulas. This one here looks good, but then this one here is not. I don't know why. Probably because I fed it with too much water, I think. Yeah, they're not really spaced out evenly or properly or thoroughly. In general, I have to say so, hey. But anyways, we've got this big calendula seedling. I've actually got about 3 of these. Maybe when I plant these later in the season, they do sport out like smaller flowers. Okay, let me just show you the strawberry plants now. Unfortunately, bad news for this one here. This strawberry plant here that I've been, planting, well, obviously that is actually purchased from someone else's garden centre, of course. Unfortunately, that thing there has died, and as you can straightforward see, man, look at the strawberry plant. I know it has died, but it's not too late. I can come along and grab a strawberry leaf and a stem together so that I can pretty much plant more strawberries for next year if I can. I think that could be possible, I suppose, hey? But yeah, it's not looking fairly good. This strawberry plant has seen far much better days. It's got a big vine on it, of course. Yeah, it's not that great in particular. Anyways, we've got some sunflower seedlings, and I'm not seeing that much in the way of extra sunflowers, which is not that great. But anyways, hey, they are fairly resilient to such a dry climate, and that's why these plants are highly successful at growing in my backyard garden. I didn't even expect this summer to be quite drier than average, actually, especially the July that we had so far, and August, if it does want to or not. I don't know. But let's take a look at the nasturtiums. The nasturtiums are very much looking very stable, I suppose. There is a mix of those in which they have been flowering and others in which they have not. So at least it's quite a good thing to see. And sorry if I'm taking a toilet break on purpose. But anyways, yes, apart from the dried, parched looking grass, and yes, we've got some fresh pumpkin seedlings, of course. I do make sure to try and, water them once or twice a week, but then I have to check my pumpkins. I really have to make sure that, yes, I do have to watch out for the hot weather and keep watering as much as I can, and just to sustain the plant's growth and the plant's health. Now, this actually sounds normal, but once I have a pumpkin, let's move on and talk about the pumpkins actually. Once I have a pumpkin fruit that has actually been starting to form from here, but at the same time it has been covered through various different types of, yeah, it doesn't look that great when I see a female pumpkin flower. And I mean, that's normal because when you get poorly developed fruit, they do drop out, but this actually makes more room for other pumpkin fruit to really take over. And I could tell you what, my backyard garden is going to be a giant pumpkin infestation. Do you know why? Because we've got another pumpkin flower. There's a female one. In fact, there's one female that's about to pop out at any given time. Then I can also start to see there's a male cluster, of course. There's a big cluster of male pumpkin flowers. Some more calendula seedlings. Yes, I tell you what, they are blossoming in different colours. Some of them look pink and yellow, and others are, well, basically opposite colours. Right, so there it is. I can just see it. Let me deadhead this beauty so that we can keep the flowering process going, of course. And we've got some fresh tomatoes, and my crikey Charlies, look at the tomato seedling that I've just planted so far. I'm actually getting quite a few tomato seedlings, well actually, tomato fruits actually. I tell you what, look at the tomato fruit. It has actually generated quite a lot of fruit than what I've never ever expected, I suppose. So I need to wait for the hotter temperatures to ripen the crop like so. Hey, it should build its nutrients along the way. Hopefully they should grow bigger and better, I suppose, hey. And I mean, it's very normal with, summer straightforward whittling away. Once you get towards autumn, although it does sort of reappear by early to mid-September, mind you, that's one of the bigger things about summertime. You just don't know, the knife edge towards summertime, August and September, you just never ever know what's going to be like. And there's a creaking door in the background. But anyways, maybe after filming this video, I will have to try and water it down again, just because, I don't want, the plants to die out in this drought. But anyways, hey, yes. Okie dokie, we can see a big pumpkin vine looking like that. And can I see a female fruit that's about to be formulated? Yes, I can see a female flower that's about to be on its way. There are lots and lots of buds. Every time when I see a round lump of pumpkin fruit, that tells me it's a female flower. Okay, let me just walk around and see what else there is. There is a sunflower seedling which has started to wilt, because this is very much normal. This is how, summer is always going to be like. Hey, there's always going to be a lot of poor performances and things like that. And there is a sunflower, which obviously I can just see the great big sunflower, in which I try to water it even more, but then I've now realised, hey, this thing is actually dying. I don't think it's going to flower really successfully, because look at the leaves and look at the entire plant. It has actually seen far better days. I mean, look at the state and the condition of that sunflower. It's not looking very good at all. Maybe I should have added some fertilizer, but I think this plant has seen far much better days because of the heat. But anyways, hey, that is actually quite a very stunning plant. It's not the only sunflower alone. I have got, once again, hey, there's actually quite a lot of sunflower activities right here. I am actually so happy and glad that I finally now had the chance to try and grow as many sunflowers as I can, like, you know, these ones. I tell you what, the number of sunflowers I have in my backyard garden is actually quite incredible. So there's actually quite a few sunflowers, about roughly a few of them, which is nice to know. So I've got about 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and also, you know, and 6, and also 7. I feel like I got 6, 7. So I didn't mean to sound like the absolute cringe meme. I know I was gonna say 6, 7, but then hey, there you go. I wonder who knows around across through the winter of 2026, 7. Again, I don't know why I'm saying 6, 7 again. Honestly, I don't know why I'm referring to the same joke and the same meme all over again. I mean, that's completely nutty crazy. Talking about this, hearing about that, of course. I mean, part of me is thinking, what's winter 2027 going to be like? Pretty much wet in general, in a similar plot to 2026. And I think the summer will also have the same plot, you know, from next year's summer, it may have the same plot for 2026, you know, for 2027, I think. As 2026, you know, I'm sort of thinking, you know, maybe summer 2027 is going to be like another summer 2026 phenomenon. I'm pretty sure about that because of this long, hot, dry summer progression. But hey, we are coming close to the middle part of August, and it's not particularly quite late in that time, I suppose. So not particularly way too late. I can start to see a little wasp, which is very, very nice to know. It's clinging onto one of the pumpkin seedling leaves. I tell you what, my pumpkins have actually been doing so well despite the heat and the constant dry weather. They are very dependent of, you know, all that water that I've decided to aerate and moisturize with. And I'll tell you what, this is actually quite nice and stunning. Is that an actual wasp, or is it a hoverfly mimicking a wasp? Could be a sign of Bayesian mimicry, isn't it? Where a harmless species mimics the appearance of a dangerous species. Quite interesting, isn't it? But anyways, yes, we've got a lot of nasturtiums. They've also been proven to be drought tolerant, of course. So hopefully by next year, I shall try and focus on planting a drought tolerant crop load or a drought tolerant plant load, because hey, I want to try and do focus on conserving water by next year and try and basically replicate maybe in the theme of an arid desert, so that hey, this could be potential and something very nice. And yes, it's not just my garden plants which are totally suffering in such heat. Look at the rest of the hedgerows. They have actually started to wilt the leaves downwards. You can see all of the leaves are dangling down, and that is actually quite a concerning sign. When I see the leaves dangling down like that, that is a gutless warning sign to see how dry this summer has been. It has been absolutely bone dry, exponentially dry. Although I'd definitely say, hey, this side here, let's just say on the second half here, right, is actually looking a-okay. But these ones here, you can see the rest of the hedge leaves are starting to droop, which is quite phenomenal. And speaking of phenomenal, guess what has decided to turn up in my backyard garden? A very fresh blackberry fruit. There's a lot of these guys around here, and they've actually been very, very good. Very nice. Sweet, but then sour at the same time. And it's amazing in how, you know, what we call like a false autumn, it is very strange for the fact that as we've seen so much hot and dry weather, it has actually accelerated and rapidly made autumn appearing earlier than usual. Although with that being said, hey, our crops are not going to be dealing very well with it because, hey, of the drought that we've endured over the many months ago, which I probably presume was about 2 months, 3 months, possibly 4 months, obviously. I can't really tell because, hey, we've been stuck within this drought for quite some time now. And for me, hey, that is actually very strange. And actually, when you think about this month, I'll tell you what, it has been very, very unusually bone dry. And I mean, some of the plants are starting to suffer and die out, like this one here, which I believe is a thistle. That plant there has actually started to die out. And if I go back to the strawberry plant, I mean, look at that strawberry plant. That has not only wilted and drooped down, but also some of its leaves have also started to basically dry out. And because there's not much moisture, look at that. They've just gone through over time, and you can start to see some of the leaves of other plants are starting to shade off very, very quickly. Yes, it's not just hot weather that is also the main instigator. There are also like other several different negative implications, including, mildew and other fungal diseases and whatnot, as well as weeds taking over my backyard garden. I'm very surprised to see that August, being one of the wetter summer months in the UK, well, the northern parts are, of course, getting a lot of it, but as strange as it sounds, the southern parts of the UK, no wonder why they seem to be in drought mode, which is absolutely weird. I mean, the jet stream has been moving south and north, but then obviously it's been moving north, but then, hey, I mean, what's going on with our weather, man? Our climate is changing so rapidly. Like, it's an exponential sign that climate change and global warming has been totally and utterly, neglected. We've been talking about it, but the negligence of just having to mitigate against climate change is still at large. That's the very big problem I'm starting to rant about here. I'm sorry if I have to complain about climate change and global warming, but hey, but do we really want a summer to be like, over 40 degrees Celsius in the future? I mean, we are, but then that's the thing. We can't really straightforward do anything about having to, well, we can obviously mitigate, and there's some people screaming on the background like, woo! On the background, hey, sorry about that. But I mean, that's the thing, when it comes to climate change, don't hesitate. We will straightforward think about hope. I mean, there is a big battleground. Of course, there's, the old saying, there's a half glass full and there's a half glass being empty. I'm optimistic and pessimistic about how this climate change program, about having to mitigate, several different natural disasters, including heat waves, droughts, wildfires, floods, various thunderstorms and other things like that, tornadoes, different cyclonic weather patterns around the world, hurricanes, typhoons, strong gusty winds, etc. That is the main problem I'm talking about. This is what I'm really on about. This is the sort of thing, this is the sort of aspect I'm really straightforward aiming to determine of how to mitigate against climate change. And of course, yes, this will be my New Year's resolution. My New Year's resolution for this year, I was I was expecting to become like a freaking historian, but then I became like a freaking with the Wigan train spotter. Yeah, I should probably stop ranting here, because if I start ranting a lot, well, that's not gonna help, isn't it? No, that's not gonna help. We can't just straightforward hear about a guy who likes to rant about the climate and stuff. Let's just be very careful of what we're up to. Okay, I've got a lot of birds here. Is that a robin or is that a sparrow? I think we are dealing with... was that the same juvenile robin I've seen before? I've got some cornflowers, and I've also got some lettuce. Now, I've actually watered these guys recently today. Hopefully, I shall have to probably put them into direct shading, because they will start to either wilt or they will start having the urge to bolt. That is the problem about lettuce. They only work when the temperatures are around 21 to 25 degrees Celsius or 24 degrees Celsius. But then when 25 degrees Celsius comes along to play, these lettuces will start to taste bitter when they start to bolt and produce some very responsible productions of like seeds and other whatnot. But anyways, hey, who knows? The lettuce seedlings can also be very good to be produced for like the following year. Who knows about that? Or maybe just the remnants of the year, if it doesn't get too hot. Anyway, so yes, we've got some pumpkins. And speaking of sunflowers, I mean, check out this new small sunflower that has unexpectedly turned up out of nowhere. That is actually quite impressive. It does sort of look very strange, since it really compares with the calendulas that are tucked straight in the back, which is quite strange, and they do look a little bit like a sunflower mimic. Quite weird, isn't it? Right, I'm just going to go ahead and traverse. There's some of my pepper crops. They won't be producing fruit because it is nearly coming up towards September and October. So maybe the shortening of the days and also the lack of warmth during the autumn months, apart from September probably, it might probably, or October, and possibly November, who knows, these plants might start to flourish. but I don't really think so. So I might have to probably straightforward leave this video out here because I've got to do other stuff. And I might actually have to try and re-water the entire backyard garden so that, hey, guess what? I want to try and protect this backyard garden from completely nutty dying out in a desiccating world that we're living in at the moment. It's almost like living in Africa. In fact, it's almost like either living in Africa, Australia, or the southwestern parts of the United States. Or maybe like, you know, what's another dry area which does get rain at times? Pakistan? The Gujarati state of India? I don't know. There's a lot of dry parts around the world. And in that case, hey, there's a lot of like sort of arid and semi-arid places, or places in the tropics which often tend to act a little bit like arid places in the world these days. So, I mean, that's just the thing. I have actually watered down my pumpkin recently. I might talk about looking after my pumpkins during hot weather, and also pumpkins as a whole plant. So maybe in another video's time, if I do have the urge to do so. But I'm going to leave this video right here. I'm going to go ahead and straightforward water all of my plants down one more time, just to help rehydrate these plants so that they don't actually die out in the heat. And if you really enjoyed this video, please give this video a very good like, subscribe for more flat videos like this in the future. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Stay cool and stay hydrated throughout this week because it is going to be very hot. And bye for now. And remember, use water wisely.